Welcome to Insights. I'm Adam Rivers.
And I'm Sarah Collins. In this episode, we'll reflect carefully on the Qur'an verse by verse, focusing on wording, context, and coherence.
To start us off, we are looking at what is perhaps the most repeated phrase in the lives of Muslims. Yet, ironically, it might also be the most overlooked, at least in terms of its sheer depth.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are looking at the phrase, Bismillah Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. This is the opening of the revelation. And honestly, I mean, it's so common that I think for many people, it just becomes background noise.
Right. It's the paradox of familiarity, isn't it?
Exactly.
Something becomes so ubiquitous in your daily life that it just becomes invisible. You say it before you eat, before you drive, before you read. But if we actually slow down, if we really look at what this phrase is doing, it's not just some label you slap onto the beginning of a reading.
No, not at all.
The reflections we're exploring in this episode suggest that this phrase is actively setting a direction for the heart. And it does this before the tongue even speaks. It poses this unspoken question to you, the reader. By what authority do you enter this space?
That's a heavy question.
It really is. Are you entering with your own ego? Or are you entering under a banner that is much higher than yourself?
By what authority? That sounds almost legalistic at first glance, but I get the sense we were talking about something much more internal here. Because usually when I start something, whether I'm, reading a book or starting a project at work or even just eating lunch, I'm not sitting there thinking about authority.
No, of course not.
I'm thinking about me.
Yeah.
I'm hungry or I'm curious or I'm just bored. I am the center of that action.
Exactly. And that is the fundamental pivot point that this verse addresses right out of the gate. It's an orientation. The default setting of the human being is basically, in the name of myself, I do this for my pleasure or my gain or my reputation. So this verse acts as a manual override of that default setting. It demands a complete recalibration before you take a single step into the revelation.
It's fascinating how the commentary breaks this down right to the very first letter. Not even the first word, speaker B, but the very first letter, the Arabic letter ba, which is the B, in Bismillah.
Yeah, we are zooming in microscopically here.
We really are. Usually we skip right over the prepositions to get to God or mercy, but the reflections argue that the preposition itself, that little in or with, is doing some incredibly heavy lifting. Is that just, grammatical hair splitting, or is there real substance there?
Oh, it's definitely not hair splitting. In Arabic, prepositions are like keys that unlock the relationships between words. This particle, the ba, implies a lot more than just with or in. It implies this concept of ilsak, right, which means adhesion, or sticking to, or leaning upon. It suggests that the action you are about to take, whether that's reading this verse, or eating, or working, is physically and spiritually attached to the divine name.
Adhesion. That's a really specific physical image.
It is. Think about the difference between a paper clip and glue.
Okay.
A paper clip holds two pieces of paper together, right? But they are still distinct, separate entities that just happen to be touching. That's what with normally feels like. But glue, iltak, that fuses them. If you try to pull them apart, you actually tear the paper.
Wow.
This letter bes suggests that the action you are doing has no structural integrity on its own. It needs to be glued to the divine name to have any real reality.
So it's like the difference between walking next to someone and actively leaning on them for support.
Precisely. It shifts your center of gravity entirely. If you don't start with in the name of God, you essentially default to starting in the name of myself. You read to validate your own opinions or to boost your own ego, but that single letter be displaces the I from the center and places the divine there instead.
It displaces it.
Yes, it changes the reading from an act of possession like I own this knowledge to an act of crossing over. I am entering a space of higher authority.
That concept of displacement is really powerful. It's almost like physics. Two things can't occupy the exact same space at the same time. If my ego is taking up all the room, there's just no room for the divine presence.
Exactly.
If I'm reading the Qur'an or really doing anything just to prove I'm smart or to find arguments to win a debate online, I'm effectively starting in the name of my ego.
Right. And the commentary points out that this usually happens subconsciously. We don't say in the name of my ego out loud. That would be absurd. But the be forces a conscious reset. It makes you say, I'm attaching this action to a source that is not me. It's a profound declaration of dependency.
Dependency.
Yeah, you are leaning your weak, limited human action against a pillar of absolute reality. If you take away the pillar, the action just falls flat. It becomes completely hollow.
I want to push on this idea of dependency for a second, because in our modern culture, dependency is usually seen as a negative. It's seen as a weakness. We all want to be independent, self-made, totally autonomous. But here, the very first letter of the revelation is telling you, you are not autonomous.
That's the countercultural shock of the Qur'an right there.
Yeah.
It argues that autonomy is an illusion. We are contingent beings. We didn't create ourselves. We don't even sustain our own heartbeats, you know.
Right, you don't.
So pretending to be independent is actually a form of delusion. The ba is a return to reality. It's admitting, I am a branch, not the root. And there is actually a tremendous relief in that. If you are the root, you have to carry the weight of the whole tree.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. But if you are a branch, you just have to stay connected to the trunk.
That's a relief I think a lot of people listening are probably looking for. The exhaustion of being your own God, trying to hold up your own universe every single day. It's tiring.
It's completely exhausting. And that's why this isn't just some religious ritual to check off. It's a psychological unburdening. You are offloading the ultimate responsibility of the outcome to the one who actually has the power. You put in the effort, sure, but the name carries the weight.
Speaking of the name, let's move from the letter ba to the word ism, which translates to name. The phrase is, in the name of Allah, not just by Allah. The reflections make a really interesting distinction here about why the word name is necessary. Why have this extra step? Why not just go straight to the essence and say, in Allah?
Because it serves as a bridge. The essence of God is entirely beyond human comprehension. We simply can't grasp the totality of the divine. The human mind is finite, and the divine essence is infinite.
Right, the math doesn't work.
Exactly. If you try to grasp the infinite directly, you shatter. Think of it like electricity. You need a transformer to step down the voltage so it can actually be used in your house without burning the whole place down. The name is what the tongue can articulate and what the mind can safely hold. It's a signpost.
So the name is almost like the handle.
That's a great way to put it. It's the interface. It teaches a profound intellectual humility. You aren't claiming to encompass God. You are just holding on to the rope, the name that connects you to Him. We can't know God in His entirety, but we can know Him through His names and attributes.
The surrounding verses describe this as the difference between a seeker, a talib, and a claimant, a galib. If you start with the name, you are knocking on the door. You're asking for entry. You admit that you are poor and that you need the guidance. You aren't storming the castle claiming you own the place.
And there is a linguistic nuance here, too. The word ism in Arabic is linked to the idea of elevation, or a distinguishing mark. By saying in the name, you are actively elevating your action from the chaos of conflicting motives like greed or fame or revenge, and you are assigning it a single high destination. You are quite literally naming your intention.
Which is rare when you think about it.
It is. Think about how nameless most of our actions are. We just do them. We react to things. We drift.
We run on autopilot all day. We eat because our stomach growls. We work because we're stressed about bills. We scroll on our phones because we're bored. There is no label on those actions. They are just biological or psychological reflexes.
Exactly. Those actions get lost in the fog of instinct. But when you apply the ism, the name, you are lifting that action right out of the fog. You are giving it a distinct, elevated identity. You are saying this action is now defined by its connection to God. It raises the action from the mundane to the sacred.
So it stops being just me eating lunch and becomes me nourishing the body that God gave me in God's name.
Precisely. That transforms the mundane into worship. Suddenly, everything you do, if you tag it correctly with that intention, becomes part of your spiritual life. It completely breaks down the wall between what is secular and what is religious.
That is one of the core functions of the Quran, isn't it? It refuses to let you compartmentalize your life into Sunday morning versus the rest of the week. If you can say Bismillah before it, it's worship. And I guess if you can't say Bismillah before it, you probably shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
Which brings up the idea of the phrase acting as a filter.
Yes, a filter. If I say in the name of God before I do something, I am subjecting that action to a very specific, very high standard. The commentary asks, is this action worthy of that label? You can't really say in the name of God and then proceed to cheat someone in a business deal or lie to your family. Well, you physically can, but
You can only say it with your tongue. The action itself will scream a contradiction. It exposes what the commentary calls linguistic hypocrisy. If the action doesn't align with the name, the label just falls right off.
the adhesion fails.
Exactly, it's about ilsak again. If the glue, the intention isn't real, the name doesn't stick to the action. Imagine trying to stick a fragile, handle with care sticker on a sledgehammer that you're actively using to smash a window. The label and the object are in total absurd conflict.
That's a brilliant image. So the Bismillah isn't a magic spell that makes everything you do okay. It's a truth serum.
Yeah.
It reveals whether what you're doing is actually compatible with the divine. If I'm about to write a nasty, hateful comment online and I try to type, "In the name of the most merciful" first, I should choke on the words.
If you were genuinely present in the meaning, yes, you physically won't be able to finish the sentence. The name acts as a witness. It's an internal auditor asking, does this fit? If it doesn't, you have a choice to make. Either change the label, admit you're doing it for your own spite, or change the action and don't post the comment.
I love the idea of the internal auditor. We so often think of God as the external auditor, the one waiting at the end of time to check the books and tally the score. But this brings that audit into the present moment. It makes it real time.
And that real-time audit is exactly what builds character. It's so easy to be good when other people are watching you. But Bismillah is often whispered. It's entirely between you and the divine. It builds a quiet integrity that doesn't depend on having an audience.
Let's talk about the central name itself, Allah. In the grammatical structure of this sentence, it is the beating heart. We have the particle ba, we have the word name, and then we hit the absolute core.
Yes. The reflections describe Allah as the comprehensive name. It is the one that gathers all the other attributes together. It's the ultimate referent for all values. If you say the creator, you are referring to one specific aspect. If you say the powerful, that's another aspect. But Allah implies all of them combined in perfect unity.
And there's a psychological angle to this too, right?
An incredibly powerful one. It suggests that humans naturally have many gods or centers of gravity in our lives. We have the fear of people, the desire for money, the constant seeking of social approval, the chasing of power. And having all these different centers fractures the human psyche.
You're pulled in 10 different directions at once. I need to please my boss. I need to impress my friends. I need to satisfy my bank account. I need to feed my own insecurities. It really feels like a modern form of polytheism, even if we don't literally have statues sitting on our shelves.
That's exactly what it is. It's psychological polytheism. You have multiple masters.
Right.
And the inherent problem with having multiple masters is that they constantly give you conflicting orders.
Right.
Your greed says take the money, but your conscience says don't steal, while your vanity says look good doing it. You are just torn apart. We live these fractured, torn lives. Part of us obeys the market, part obeys our ego, part obeys social pressure. We are entirely fragmented.
And that fragmentation is the root of so much anxiety, because you can never, ever satisfy all of them at once. The moment you please your boss, your family is upset.
Exactly. Starting your action with Bismillah is a direct invitation to unify that internal chaos. It invites you to have one single center. It challenges the fragmentation by saying there's only one true center of gravity. It essentially fires all the other masters.
That sounds like a massive relief, decluttering the soul.
It truly is. It immediately lowers the social pressure on the heart. You aren't doing this for the audience anymore. You are doing it for the one. It integrates your personality. It's not that you stop loving your family or working your job, but all those different streams are redirected so they flow into one single river.
So instead of worrying about what 50 different people think of you, you only worry about what one thinks of you.
Yes. And that one has defined himself, as we'll see in a moment, by mercy. So it's a complete liberation from the tyranny of the many.
Lowering the pressure. I love that phrasing. We act so often out of a sheer fear of judgment. What will they say? But if the opening line of your life script is, "In the name of Allah," then they don't matter nearly as much. He matters.
And he is singular. The name Allah is grammatically singular in Arabic. It doesn't even accept a plural in the true sense. It reinforces this deep idea of focus. A person with one goal is at peace. A person with 10 conflicting goals is anxious. The Bismillah is essentially a recipe for peace. It's the ultimate focus hack.
In a world of constant distraction, we definitely need a focus hack. Now let's look at the description that follows the name. God could have introduced himself here as the powerful, the creator, the avenger, the judge. All of those are true attributes within the theology. But the very first introduction in the entire revelation is Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, the most gracious, the most merciful. Why lead with this?
This is a critical first impression. Imagine you are about to meet the ruler of the universe. The door is opening. You are terrified. What is the very first thing you hear? If you heard the avenger, you would turn and run.
Absolutely.
If you heard the judge, you would freeze in your tracks. But instead, you hear the most merciful. The Qur'an is deliberately establishing the lens through which you must view everything else that follows. It doesn't begin with a terror that paralyzes you. It begins with a mercy that opens you.
It's setting the terms of the relationship right from word one.
Exactly. Imagine walking into a throne room to meet a king. If the guard outside tells you the king is waiting to judge you, you walk in stiff, terrified, completely defensive. You'll probably lie to protect yourself. You'll hide all your flaws.
Oh, for sure. I'd be thinking of every mistake I ever made. I'd have my walls up.
But if the guard says the king is waiting to show you mercy, you walk in entirely differently. You walk in open. You might actually admit your mistakes because you feel safe enough to be vulnerable. The commentary argues that this is deeply pedagogical. It's about how to teach a human being.
How so?
You cannot teach a terrified student. Panic shuts down the learning centers of the human brain. So God opens the book by establishing safety.
There is a beautiful breakdown of the root word here, Rahama, which translates to mercy. But it's not an abstract, cold legal term. In English, mercy can sometimes sound like a judge deciding not to send you to jail on technicality. It's formal, sounds like a legal transaction.
Right, but in Arabic, it's deeply organic. It comes from the word ram, which literally means the womb.
A womb.
Yes. It implies warmth, connection, nourishment, and protection. It's visceral. It tells the reader, the God you are approaching is not some distant, cold administrator sitting behind a desk. He is a profound source of care. This is absolutely vital for changing a person's heart. Think about the womb. It surrounds the fetus, it feeds it, it protects it from outside shocks, and it allows it the time and space to grow. The fetus is entirely dependent on the womb.
And how does that metaphor change the reader?
Because, like we said, a person who feels threatened becomes defensive. They put up walls. But a person who feels safe can lower those defenses. By introducing himself as merciful first with this womb-like care, God allows the human being to admit their ignorance and actually be shaped and taught. It's a pedagogical masterpiece. The Bismillah creates a safe space in the most profound, original sense of the term. A space where you can be broken, imperfect, and still be held.
It's interesting you use the term safe space because that's become a bit of a cultural buzzword. But here, it's not about avoiding uncomfortable truths so you don't get offended. It's about creating a foundation of ultimate safety so that you actually can face those uncomfortable truths about yourself.
Exactly. The Qur'an is going to challenge you. As you read further, it's going to tell you exactly where you are wrong. It's going to command you to change your life. That is hard, painful work. You can only do that hard work if you implicitly trust the one who is telling you to do it. You trust the womb. You don't fight the womb. So by establishing Rahma, or mercy, first, God is earning the trust of the reader before issuing a single command.
The commentary also draws a fascinating distinction between the two words used here, Ar-Rahman and Ar-Ro. They look very similar, and they come from that same root, but they carry different weights. Why the repetition? Is it just for poetic emphasis? Like saying, the really, really merciful?
It's definitely not just emphasis. It's a massive widening of the scope. This is where Arabic morphology is just stunning. Ar-Rahman is on a grammatical scale that implies fullness, vastness, and an overwhelming overflow.
Okay.
Imagine a vast ocean. It's the mercy that encompasses literally everything. The believer, the non-believer, nature, the entire cosmos. It's the baseline state of being merciful. It's the rain that falls on the just and the unjust alike. It is the very fabric of existence. You exist right now because of Ar-Rahman. The sun comes up this morning because of Ar-Rahman.
So Rahman is the indiscriminate mercy, the mercy that you get simply for existing.
Yes, exactly. It's the mercy of sheer provision. Even the person who spends their whole life denying God still breathes God's air and eats God's food. That is Rahman. It's entirely unconditional.
And then what about Ar-Rahim?
Ar-Rahim is on a different scale, one that implies continuity, permanence, and a very specific directed reach. It's the mercy that touches you specifically. It's active and relational. It is often linked to the mercy given to believers or those who actively seek it out.
So if Rahman is the ocean, then Rahim is the specific wave that washes over your specific feet.
That's a perfect analogy. Rahman creates the ecosystem of existence. Rahim is what guides you through your specific bad day. It's what accepts your specific repentance and comforts your specific broken heart.
That's beautiful.
The combination of the two tells the reader, you are part of a massively merciful cosmos, and at the same time, you are intimately and personally cared for. It addresses the two great human anxieties. First, is the universe cold and indifferent? No, it is Rahman. And second, does God care about little old me? Yes, he is Rahim.
That combination is incredibly reassuring. It covers the macro and the micro perfectly. It means the air I breathe is a grand gift of Rahman, but the sudden insight I get when I'm struggling with a personal problem, that's a direct gift of Rahim.
Exactly. And the commentary points out that by placing these two side by side right at the start, the revelation is actively training us to see mercy in layers. It's teaching us that mercy isn't a monolith. There is the broad mercy of creation, and there is the tailored mercy of guidance. There is the mercy of physical health and the mercy of spiritual forgiveness. It's training the human eye to spot mercy absolutely everywhere.
I want to circle back to something we touched on a bit earlier, the idea of Bismillah acting as a break. The material we are reviewing suggests that saying this phrase physically and mentally forces a pause. It acts as a speed bump in the rush of life. Why do we need a break so badly?
Because human beings are impulsive machines. We run constantly on stimulus and response. Someone insults you, snap, you insult them back. You see something you want online, snap, you buy it. We are constantly, endlessly reacting. The commentary calls Bismillah a required moment of suspension before the plunge into action. It forces a gap between the stimulus and your response.
It's an anti-autopilot mechanism. Because normally for most of us, the gap between I want and I take is essentially 0 seconds.
Exactly. And the critical point here is that in a 0-second gap, there is no room for morality. Morality requires a choice, and choice requires time, even if it's just a split microsecond. Bismillah forces that microsecond into existence. It makes you ask, wait, under whose authority am I about to do this? It allows your higher ethical brain to catch up with your reactive lizard brain.
So it really functions as a circuit breaker.
Yes, a moral circuit breaker. If you are about to scream at your spouse in anger or cheat on a tax form or, write something awful online, and you genuinely try to say, in the name of the most merciful, you will choke on the words. The framework of the phrase actively rejects the action you're about to take. The text says that trying to couple a sin with Bismillah is like trying to mix oil and water. They absolutely refuse to blend.
The source uses a really strong image here. It says, if you say Bismillah and then knowingly do something cruel, you are trying to dress falsehood in the clothes of the divine. That is a betrayal of the highest order. It's actually worse than just doing the bad thing. It's doing the bad thing and having the audacity to stamp God's signature on it.
It creates a powerful internal witness. You realize you don't need a police officer standing over your shoulder. The name itself becomes the conscience. This transforms the phrase from a simple cultural ritual into a rigorous ethical regulator. It's not just for blessing your cup of tea, it's for auditing your soul. It asks, is this tea earned lawfully? Is this conversation turning into gossip? Is this business deal actually fair? It shines a bright spotlight into the dark corners of our lives that we usually prefer to keep hidden.
This concept of the ethical regulator is fascinating because it completely internalizes the law. Instead of following rules just because you're afraid of getting caught and punished, you follow them because you've oriented your entire being towards this specific high direction.
And notice exactly what that direction is. It's not just God the judge. The direction is God the merciful. So when you pause at that speed bump, you aren't just asking, is this legal? You are asking a much harder question, is this merciful? That's a significantly higher standard. You might be perfectly legally allowed to say something harsh to someone who wronged you, but is it Rahim? Is it reflective of the name you literally just invoked?
That raises the bar so much. It changes the everyday question from, can I do this, to should I do this?
Right. And that naturally leads us to the broader societal implications, because if individuals start thinking this way on a micro level, the macro society changes. If everyone is pausing to ask, is this merciful, before they act, you end up building a very different kind of world.
If we zoom out from the individual to the society, the commentary argues that Bismillah proposes a fundamentally different kind of civilization. It's not just a personal mantra to whisper, it's a cultural blueprint.
If you look historically, societies usually started things in the name of the king or the tribe or a specific idol. That meant the action, the war, the monument, the law, was dedicated to power, dominance, or tribal victory. The beginning defined the entire agenda.
Like saying, in the name of Rome or in the name of the crown.
Right. And those are exclusionary beginnings. They immediately set up an us versus them dynamic. In the name of my tribe inherently means against your tribe. But starting with, in the name of Allah, the most merciful, shifts the civilizational center away from power and towards mercy. It suggests a civilization where the highest absolute value isn't conquering the other, but establishing mercy for all.
It totally reframes the very concept of what strength is. In our world, we usually associate strength with domination. The strong person or the strong nation is the one who can just take what they want.
Yes, we think strength is the ability to crush your enemies. But if the all-powerful creator defines himself first and foremost as the all-merciful, then true strength is the ability to forgive when you have the power to crush. It's the ability to be perfectly just when you could easily be a tyrant. Bismillah teaches that cruelty is actually a form of weakness. Restraint is true power.
That's a profound.
The commentary notes that someone who can destroy but actively chooses to nurture is reflecting the divine attribute. Someone who just destroys is acting like a mindless force of chaos.
This is a radical inversion of how empires usually operate. Empires are built on shock and awe. This verse suggests a civilization built on care and connection.
And think about the name, again, in this context. If you act in the name of a nationalist identity, your loyalty stops at that border. If you act in the name of Ar-Rahman, the universally merciful, your loyalty is to the welfare of all creation because Ar-Rahman encompasses everyone and everything. It shatters the walls of tribalism. You cannot genuinely say, in the name of the universally merciful, and then commit atrocities or genocide. It's an ontological contradiction.
This also touches deeply on our relationship with nature, doesn't it? If the physical world is a direct result of Ar-Rahman, the vast mercy, then the air, the water, the forests, they aren't just stuff for us to extract and exploit.
They are traces of mercy. And you don't loot a gift, you respect it. It changes the human role from being a predator of the earth to being a trustee of the earth. The commentary makes a beautiful point here. If the air is a mercy from God, you breathe it with conscious gratitude. If the water is a mercy, you don't dump chemicals in it. You are walking through a grand gallery of divine gifts. To trash the gallery is a direct insult to the artist.
It frames ecology not as a burdensome political issue or a regulatory hurdle, but as a basic theological courtesy. We are guests in the house of Ar-Rahman.
Exactly. And guests should behave well. They shouldn't smash the furniture of the host.
Finally, the commentary points out that this verse is placed at the very beginning of the Qur'an to teach us exactly how to read everything that follows it. It's essentially the user manual for the revelation itself.
This is a crucial point for anyone reading the text. The Qur'an contains intense warnings, strict laws, descriptions of hell, and firm commands. If you skip the opening line, you might view all of those things as threats from a tyrannical dictator. You might read a verse about punishment and think, God hates me, or God just wants to hurt us. But Bismillah sets the required context. The one issuing these firm warnings is the most merciful.
So the warning itself is actually an act of mercy.
Exactly. Think of a mother screaming at her toddler who is about to touch a red-hot stove. The scream is loud, it's startling, it might even scare the child. But the motive behind the scream is pure mercy. She screams because she loves the child. If she didn't care, she'd just sit back and let the child burn. The strict laws in the Qur'an are there to protect you from your own self-destruction. The Bismillah is the key signature for the whole symphony.
The key signature.
Yes. If you play a piece of music in the wrong key, it sounds entirely dissonant. If you read the Qur'an without the lens of mercy, you will deeply misunderstand the manager of the universe.
That metaphor of the key signature is perfect. If you play a joyful, happy song in a minor key, it sounds tragic and dark. If you read a book of divine guidance in a key of anger, it sounds like a book of condemnation.
And the commentary warns that people do exactly this. People read the text to find ammunition to attack others or to fuel their own internal self-hatred. They completely ignore the opening banner. They walk into the text in the name of their own anger or in the name of their own ego, not in the name of God's mercy. And because of that, they find exactly what they're looking for, rigidity and harshness, instead of what is actually there, which is healing and guidance.
It essentially says, don't project your own psychological baggage onto God. Let God tell you who he is first.
And he has told us, before he told us anything else at all, before he gave a single solitary command regarding how to pray or fast or live, he gave us his name and his primary attribute. He prioritized the relationship over the rule.
That's a profound thought to sit with. The relationship comes before the rule.
Always. Because rules without a relationship just breed rebellion. But rules situated within a deep relationship of mercy, those breed trust and transformation.
There's one last thing from the commentary that really stuck with me, and it's about the concept of beginning itself. We usually think of beginning as just a mechanical start, pushing the play button. But the text says Bismillah teaches us that true beginning is actually an act of summoning.
Yes, it's not just starting a stopwatch. It's a deliberate summoning of presence. When you start with Bismillah, you are actively summoning the awareness of God into the very moment of your action. You are bringing the vertical dimension into your horizontal timeline.
The horizontal timeline,
Yeah.
meaning just our daily routine.
Right. Most of our life is horizontal. One mundane thing after another. Wake up, work, eat, sleep. Bismillah cuts across that flat timeline vertically. It connects the mundane, passing moment to the eternal.
So it transforms time itself. Time isn't just a ticking clock pushing you to the grave. It becomes a vessel for eternal meaning.
And it transforms the self in the process. The commentary ends with this really beautiful summarizing idea that Bismillah acts as a cure for the two great polarizing diseases of the human condition: arrogance and despair.
Curing arrogance and despair. How does it do both? They seem like opposites.
It cures arrogance because you say, "In the name of Allah," which forces you to acknowledge that you are not the ultimate source of power. You are a contingent servant. You are leaning on the divine. So you simply can't be arrogant if you truly internalize that. But at the same exact time, it cures despair because you follow it with Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. You acknowledge that the ultimate power you are leaning on is infinitely kind and caring. So you can't be hopeless. You are small, yes, but you are held by the great.
That is a perfect, striking balance. We usually swing wildly between thinking we are untouchable God's arrogance or thinking we are worthless garbage despair. This completely centers us. We are servants, but we are servants of the merciful.
Dignified servants, deeply loved servants, and that is a profoundly healthy, stable place to live your life.
It really is. It turns what could just be a repetitive ritual phrase into a complete, comprehensive worldview. It changes how you see yourself when you look in the mirror, how you see God, and how you see the world around you. It's not just about uttering syllables, it's about aligning your daily reality with the ultimate reality.
That's the sheer power of these verses. They aren't just words on a page. They are entire worlds waiting to be entered. And all of that is just from the very first verse.
Just the first verse. It sets the stage for everything that follows. If we can get this one right, if we can really deeply internalize this orientation of mercy and dependency, then the rest of the journey through the Qur'an becomes a journey of awe and discovery rather than a journey of fear.
Exactly. It stops being a trial and it becomes a journey home.
That's it for this episode of Insights.
If you found this reflection helpful, follow the show and join us next time as we continue verse by verse in the Qur'an.
Until then, take one idea from this verse into your day.